All right, so in chapter 7, we are going to kind of bring some concepts we've already talked about a little bit, and kind of reinforce those. Um, and one of the biggest things is with this chapter, we're talking primarily about how can we control our costs, um, either after service and or during service as well. Okay. So, one thing that we can look at when we are, I think I've said this before, as managers, we often have to become kind of like detectives and kind of figure out, okay, here's the problem. What's the root issue of the problem and how do I fix it? Okay. And so, in this regard, some of the tools that we have available to us include our waste reports and our usage reports. Okay. So if you remember last class, we talked about the inventory, how many we issued to figure out where we can compare our perpetual and our physical inventories to determine if we have any product missing, um, to figure out then why is that product missing. And so in this chapter, we're introducing some of those tools that we have available to us, including those usage and waste reports. Okay. So for the usage, the perpetual inventory, if you look at the top of that page, it has a sales report. Okay. So those of you who are online, if you want to download that chapter 8 activity, that's this page right here. And you can follow along as well. Okay. But we have that sales report. That basically is our perpetual inventory. How many did we actually sell? Okay. So how do we determine how many of each item we actually sold?
At the
Add them all up. So depending on how many each one sold, each server sold, we just add them up. So number one, you just add up each server's amount to get the number sold for each item. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so how many ribeyes did we sell? 68, good. Salmon, 70, check. 85 New York strips. How many scallops? 38, good. And pasta primaveras, 39, okay? So that just basically tells us how many we actually sold. Now, a lot of times our POS, our point of sales, we can print a report and it'll just do that for us. Okay. But it's also helpful to understand where that number comes from so that if you don't have a point of sales, then you can actually do that yourself. Right. Then number two is our physical inventory. Okay. What does physical inventory mean? Okay, what we actually have on hand, right? What we can see, what we can count. Okay, that is our physical inventory. So at the end of the night, we returned 6 ribeyes to inventory. Okay. At the end of the night, we returned 25 portions of salmon back into our inventory, meaning we did not prepare them. Okay. So they were going to go back into our inventory and we'll use them again tomorrow. Okay. Let's look at our product usage report. So this is the page that you in class, this is the page that you do not have. I apologize. Okay, bless you. So our product usage report, this is where we can determine what our variance is. Okay, remember, issued is what we gave at the beginning of the shift. So at the beginning of the shift, we issued 75 ribeyes. We returned 6 back into our inventory. And then my perpetual is that 68 that was sold. Okay. So if we come down here and we sold 68, and how many did we return? We returned 6. So what is 68 plus 6? 74. Okay. So if that is 74 and we issued 75, what is our answer? -1. Right? So 68 plus 6 is 74. That is my perpetual plus my physical. Okay. And then I issued 75. So that number is actually 1 short. So my variance is -1. Okay. Go ahead and do the grill. Let's do the grilled salmon together. Let me do it in pen instead of typing it. That might make a little bit more sense. All right. So
Sir,
for the grilled, Miss
can
Leonius,
I
go ahead.
can I ask a quick question? Where is this Excel at?
It is in module number 9, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So grilled salmon, we sold 70. How many did we return?
Oh,
We returned 25. So 70 plus 25 is 95. Okay. And we issued 95. So 95 minus 95 is 0. That means my variance is 0. I have all of my salmon accounted for. Okay. So picture it. When that grill cook comes up, that grill cook shows up and there's 95 portions of salmon at his station, his or her station. Okay. And then through all the evening, the servers are selling salmon. They sold 70 portions of salmon. And at the end of the night, the grill cook counts up. I have 25. I'm going to put them back in the refrigerator so that way we can cook them tomorrow. So that 70 plus the 25 is 95, which equals the number that I actually issued at the beginning. So my variance is 0. All right, let's do the New York strip, scallops, and pasta primavera. Do your calculations on your own, and then you can type your answers either in the chat or you can compare your answers with your neighbor here in the class. Okay, so New York strip. If we look at our usage report, okay, how many did we sell? We sold 85. And how many were returned? 0. And so then 85 minus 85 is 0. We have all of our New York strips accounted for. Okay. Scallops. Scallops, we have 38 that were sold. How many were returned? Okay, so that is equal to 43. Okay. And then we subtract how many that were issued? 45. And we get -2. Excellent. Yeah, we want to make sure we have that negative because that tells us that we're missing.
what's the formula?
What's that?
What's the formula?
The formula is right here. The sold plus the returned minus the issued. And that will give us our variance. And what is our variance for pasta primavera? 0. Okay. So which two items should we be concerned with? The scallops and the ribeye, yes, because we're missing that product, okay? What other item might we be looking at? Not necessarily from an inventory that we're missing, but what other item do you think we might be looking at to figure out if we have enough of it in the future?
Dishes.
Salmon in New York.
What's that?
The New York strip steak,
Yeah, the New York strip steak. Why?
because you ran out before service.
Absolutely. So 86th, that's what 86th means. 86 New York strip means we have no more of it. Okay, taking that off the menu. If we read out an hour before we were closing for the New York strip, okay, if you're not familiar with the difference between a New York strip and a ribeye, they are very different steaks. And typically people will have one favored that they prefer versus the other one. And so if we run out of New York strip, well then that's somebody's favorite steak and they came in and we don't have it available, that could impact whether or not they come back in the future. And so we want to make sure, okay, yeah, why did we run out? We had 85 this time. If our par was 85, okay, great. Then maybe we need to increase it for this particular time period. Or maybe something happened on that night. Okay, maybe that particular night we're a steakhouse that's right across the street from the Majestic Theater, and so we had a big theater crowd. And so maybe the next time we have theater shows at the Majestic, we might need to increase the number of steaks we have available. Okay. And so all those things are things that you as a manager have to figure out because we don't want to have too much. If we have too much of the product, then it could either walk away or it could spoil before we can serve it. So we don't want to have too much, but we also want to have enough on hand that we can serve all the guests that would like it. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. All right. So then we said scallops had a variance of -2. Okay. Our scallops had a variance of -2. Well, that means we're missing 2 orders of scallops. Okay. Is that an issue? Just 2 orders?
It can be over time.
It can be over time. Good.
How expensive they are.
Yeah, scallops are not an inexpensive item. They are pretty expensive protein. And so if we're missing 2 orders, that's something that we really need to investigate. Okay. So then we can look at our shift notes or any of our waste reports. Okay. And so what's a comment that you see about the scallops on our waste report? One was returned because it was rubbery, right? It was overcooked. And so we go back and okay, well, that accounts for 1 order because that means that person probably didn't go back in and ring in an order of scallops. They might have just gone back to the kitchen and said, hey, I need you to remake these scallops because the guest says they're rubbery. Okay. Where in reality, what we should do is, let's see, who was it? I think it was Robert. Yep, it was Robert that had the scallops remade. Okay. In reality, what Robert should have done is he should have gone back into the computer, put in another order of scallops, so that way our perpetual inventory matches our physical inventory. Okay. And so we're down to 1 order of scallops. Let's figure out what happened to the next one. Okay. And so like I mentioned at the very beginning of classes, sometimes we have to kind of put on a detective hat and figure out, okay, why are these issues happening and what can I do to make sure that doesn't happen again. All right. So if you look at your waste report, the shift notes, those of you who are in class, you do have this as well. So on the bottom, I want you to number. I want you to number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Which one of those items on the shift notes is the most concerning? And number 5, what's the least concerning? And then I want you to kind of figure that out as you go. So number 1 is the most concerning, number 5 is the least concerning, and then fill in 2, 3, and 4. Okay. All right, who had the remade scallops as their number 1 most concerning? Anybody? Anybody online had number 1 the remade scallops as your most concerning? Okay. What about the pasta primavera, the 1 gallon of primavera sauce that was sugar was used instead of salt? Who was that? Who had that as your number 1 most concerning? Okay.
I had that as mine.
Excellent. Why Jackson?
Um, I feel like the primavera sauce, there's potentially more ingredients used during the sauce making, and I feel like a gallon's kind of a lot.
Okay. Yeah. 1 gallon, if we have, let's say, a 4-ounce portion size, 128 ounces in a gallon divided by 4, that's 32 servings of pasta, right? The pasta primavera sauce, that's 32 servings of the sauce that we're not going to get to sell because we wasted that 1 gallon of sauce. Ryan, what about you?
I chose it because the employees are not paying attention, or maybe they're going to make further mistakes after that. So that they need to pay attention to every single order that they're making.
Yeah, absolutely. So that could be more operational in nature. Okay. So we've got sugar that was used instead of salt. And so maybe the people are just not paying attention. Okay. What's a potential even larger issue? Yes.
The, there's 3 issues up there that are all pasta primavera. The sauce, the pasta, and the beurre blanc sauce.
So 2 of them, yes. Beurre Blanc is not gonna, that's gonna be more like a steak sauce. Yeah. Or maybe for the scallops. But the primavera and the pasta, yes. Okay. So maybe that person, that prep cook was maybe they're distracted that day, or maybe there's a trend that this is happening. So we can look at the waste report for each day and identify trends in what's happening. Okay. One thought is, what if somebody refilled the salt container with sugar? It looks the same. So what if somebody actually grabbed the salt container, but somebody had refilled it with sugar instead of salt? And so then that means I need to test everything that's supposed to have salt in it. Because if they actually did grab the salt container, they were paying attention, but they didn't taste it. Obviously, you can't tell the difference between salt and sugar when you are just seeing it visually, maybe just putting it into the sauce. And so, yeah, there's all these potentials, right? These are all different things that you have to think critically about, like, what is the problem? And then how do I fix it? Okay. Who put the 5 pounds of pasta was overcooked as their number 1? Okay. Why is that?
I put that because you can't really fix it, but also 5 pounds of pasta is a lot. It's just a lot. It's a lot of servings. It's a lot of water wasted. It's a lot of oil, salt. Um, it's not as like it's just pasta, so there's not that much ingredients in it, but it's just a really long process as a whole. And then if you're making it from scratch, that's like a day's work just down the drain.
Yep, absolutely. So if it's not a dried pasta, if it's from scratch, that is additional labor that you're wasted. So 5 pounds, if we're doing a 4 ounce portion, that is 20 servings of pasta. Okay. Does pasta cost that much? Not really. The 4 ounces of pasta primavera sauce, the cost, probably not that much. But if I'm charging $15 to $18 for my pasta primavera, and it doesn't cost me much to make it, that's a lot of profit that I'm missing out on, right? So even though I have to remake it and it's not going to impact my profit too much, it still is impacting my profit because we rely on those high profit items to help us with our food cost when it comes to our higher ticket proteins like steak and seafood. We can't charge the same amount of profit margin on those because then people wouldn't typically buy them. So we rely on these smaller ones, these lower cost items with a higher profit margin. We rely on those to help us with our food cost percentage. All right. Anybody put 86 New York strip before 1 hour before closing as their number one? All right, good. Excellent. Thank you, Caitlin, for your comment about it impacts the customers who may want to purchase it. Joseph, what was your reasoning for putting it as number one?
Uh, Kind of the same thing. It's just a concern of if people are coming in at a later time, or if more people are coming in, that's when you would want to sell it or have it available. You wouldn't want to sell it out too early sometimes, especially if it's a special.
Yep, absolutely. Good. Good, good, good. Anybody else in here? Anybody put beurre blanc as number one? 2 cups of beurre blanc sauce because the sauce broke as number one. Anybody put it as number 5? The least important? 4? Okay. So why did you put it down towards the bottom of your list?
I feel like you could like try to fix it.
Yeah, you could potentially try to fix it. I don't remember exactly how. I think it's just put extra cold butter and just whip the crap out of it. Okay. And so kind of try to get that emulsification back. Okay. And so maybe that's an opportunity to train somebody. Okay, this is what went wrong, but don't just throw it out. Let's try to fix it first. Okay. But what is an issue with fixing a beurre blanc sauce that broke?
Use more ingredients.
Use more butter. So which means we're using more ingredients, which means our profit is going to be less. And so we have to really be conscious of that. It's like, okay, I get that it broke this time. We're going to fix it, but we don't want it to break in the future. So what can we do to fix that problem now? So maybe we can get maybe have a little bit more training on it. Maybe just like a refresher on what the process is all about. Okay. All right. Let's talk about portion control. Okay. Those of you who are in class, you do have this. It's on the back page. Okay. Our scoops are numbered. Okay. Our scoops are sized by numbers. So I don't say I have a half cup or I have a 4 ounce scoop. The scoop is basically numbered. Okay. And our factor is the number 4. So scoops are sized by number, and the magic number to determining what our scoop number is the number 4. Okay. So if we want to know what our scoop number is, we want to multiply. So we want to multiply the denominator. So if I have a half cup scoop, I'm going to multiply that denominator by 4. And that's a number 8 scoop. Okay. So what would a quarter of a cup be? We're going to multiply the denominator by 4 and we get what? 4 times 4.
Oh, 16.
16. There we go. Okay. So 16 is our number scoop for a quarter of a cup. Okay. If we want to determine the volume, we want to divide the scoop number by the number 4. Okay. So in our example, we have a scoop number 8. So we divide by 4. We get 2. And then just add the 1 on top. And that's our half cup soup or scoop. And then the same thing. If our scoop number is 12, we divide by 4. And then add that 1 on top. And it's a 1/3 cup scoop.
So the first one, this determine the scoop number is multiply by 4.
Yeah, multiply the denominator by 4.
You divide it and then the volume.
And then the bottom one, yes, you divide the scoop number by 4. And then just add that 1 on top to give you your fraction. I don't know why they don't just say half cup scoop or a 4-ounce scoop, but that's the way it is. All right, so let's talk about portion control. What is portion control and why is it important?
So you're not overeating.
So we don't overserve. Good. What else? Think about as it relates to cost control and controlling our profit.
It kind of regulates it too.
What do you mean that it regulates it?
Like if you have one server who puts out a half portion, and then another server who does 1/3, and then one who does 1/4, everybody, there's no consistency.
Okay. So that relates to customers' expectations. If we don't have that portion control, then then our customers are going to have a different experience. Okay. What else?
It helps you control like what you order because you know how many ingredients are kind of make up that one scoop. Kind of.
Exactly. It helps with our purchasing so that we know how much we are going to have to purchase. And then if we use too much of it, we're going to go through our product too quickly, and then we're going to run out of product. Okay. What else?
The outcome of the product, taste.
Okay. So with the portion control, doesn't necessarily have anything to do with taste because the recipe is going to be made already. Portion control is more about the quantity that's served.
I feel like so it would match the nutritional like
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think about the nutritional value, but yeah, so a lot of times, especially on menus where you have to have your calories listed on the menu, if you have too much, then that would actually have more calories than what your menu is posted. So that could be an issue. Okay, absolutely. I didn't even think about that. That's a good idea. What else?
I want to say presentation.
It does affect presentation. Okay. And again, that goes back to that customer's expectations. As it relates to food cost, think about our triangle. This cost at the top, how do we find that cost for our recipes? Yeah, we divide what our recipe cost us and divide by the number of portions. And then when I use that cost, I actually have to figure out how much I'm going to sell it for. So if I'm using more product, a couple of things are going to happen. I'm going to run out, so I can't sell as many. But then also, if I'm using more product because I'm not using portion control, then I'm going to actually, the cost is going to be higher than what the standard recipe is going to tell me it should be. Okay. So that's why portion control is really important. I had an example where I was up in the lab. We were serving lunch in the summertime a couple years ago, and a student was using a large metal spoon for the sauce. Okay. And the sauce that they had to serve for about 32 people was in like a quarter hotel pan. So it wasn't much sauce to begin with. And he had a giant metal spoon that he was scooping and putting sauce on the plate. So the first time I went in, I saw and I said, "Hey, just so you know, we have 28 more servings. You might want to switch to a smaller spoon." So I walked out with the students to help deliver the plates. I came back in, still using that same spoon. Hey, just let you know I'm the hotel guy, but I think I might help you out a little bit, and you might want to use a smaller spoon. Drop the plates off. I came back a third time, still using large spoon, and I was like, okay, this is his opportunity to learn the hard way. And guess what? They ran out of sauce. And it was a chimichurri sauce. So it was not a sauce that you could just make on the fly, okay, while we're in the middle of service. And so the last couple plates had no sauce on it. So it was just the steak with no sauce. Now, fortunately, the last few plates that went out went to our faculty. So, okay, that's great. He lucked out. But what if Dr. Lawson had walked in and the president of the college sits down and she has someone important at her table and we have no sauce for that plate? Okay. Portion control is so important. What are some devices that we can use for portion control?
Scales.
Yes, so we can use scales. So I know sometimes, like when I was at TGI Fridays, I would often see the prep cooks weighing out 4 ounces of pasta or 6 ounces of pasta. Okay, and then they put them into a baggie. So then that way, that person who's on the line doesn't have to sit there and weigh out 4 ounces of pasta. It's already pre-cooked, and then they just basically have to drop it in the boiling water to heat it up the last minute, get it cooked completely, and then toss it with the sauce. And so that definitely would help with that. Madison, yes, a ladle will help us with soup. So if it is a 4 ounce cup of soup, we're going to get a 4 ounce ladle, and that is how much soup is going to go into that bowl. Because sometimes our bowl is larger than the actual ounces of soup that were being served. What else?
Just gonna say always use something that is in a measured amount instead of, like you said, just a large spoon.
Okay, so a measured amount. Can you give me an example?
Like
A ladle?
like a ladle or a scoop or
Okay.
like if they're like 1 ounces or 2 ounces or 3 ounces. Like,
Yep. Excellent. Anything else? We could use a measuring cup. Absolutely. Anything else we can use for portion control?
what kinds of dishes?
The other kind of dish that we're actually going to be serving on or serving in, good. Measuring spoons, absolutely.
The hotel pans.
Um,
Like in a
yes and no. So the portion control, we're going to use hotel pans to put the product in. And we should know that this hotel pan is going to get me 50 servings, right? But what's going to get us the 50 servings is the item that we're using to do the portion control. Okay. Yeah, absolutely, Madison. So the plate itself might have indentations. That's going to be more kind of with the not necessarily the maybe the portion, but like the placement and presentation. We still want to make sure that we're using a kind of a measured scoop, like Jeff was talking about, to put into those different segments. We may know the largest segment's going to have the protein, and then the smaller segments may have a dessert and or starch and vegetable, etc. Caitlin, absolutely using rulers to cut cakes. That is a great example. So we can make sure that everything is exactly the same size. Good. All right. The other thing that we can utilize to ensure consistency is pre-portioned items. So we can actually order 4-ounce chicken breasts or 6-ounce chicken breasts. That way we know that each one is going to be the exact same size. What is an issue with having pre-portioned items?
As accurate.
They're more accurate. If I'm ordering a 6-ounce chicken breast, then every single one of those are going to be 6 ounces. Okay, they're ensuring that it's going to be 6 ounces because I'm paying for it. Okay, it's typically more expensive to have pre-portioned items. Right? If I'm going to order a 12-ounce steak, then I'm going to get 12-ounce steaks. The alternative is that I buy a 15-pound New York strip and then I have to have a butcher that cuts it to size, but I might have some variations. I may have like an 11-ounce steak here. I might have a 13-ounce steak here. Unless that butcher is so skilled, they can be consistent and do 12 ounces every single time. Okay. But then if I have someone who's skilled enough to do that, I probably have to pay them in labor because they have that skill and ability. So what we often have to do is we have to analyze, does the cost of this pre-portioned item, does it outweigh the benefit of having somebody, can I order a dozen croissants or 2 dozen croissants versus having somebody who has the expertise to make croissants fresh? And is the quality the same or close to the same? Okay. And so those pre-portioned items oftentimes are a little bit more expensive, but it's usually at the savings of labor and time. All right, so now as we're trying to figure out, going back to figure out how many items were actually sold, we want to go back and double check those guest checks. Okay. I've given you the example before where my trainer at TGI Fridays told me that if I leave the tea off of the check, then the guest will add that $2 to my tip. Okay. So that hardly ever happened. Almost, I would venture to say never happened. Okay. But Kristen, my dining room manager, front of the house manager, she's like coming to me, "Hey David, I see table 42. They have 4 teas. There's not tea in the computer. I need you to add those teas before you drop the check." All right. And then she's going to make a mental note. Okay, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I told David, table 42, to get the teas on there. And then afterwards, she's probably going to follow up. And once, maybe a couple hours later, once that check has been closed, she's going to go back and search table 42, 8 o'clock. If there's no T's on there, we're going to have a conversation. Okay. We're going to double check to make sure all of that information is on there. Because if it's not, again, remember, I'm giving out product that costs money, but I'm not bringing in sales for that product. Okay. So we want to double check those. We also want to double check that everything is charged correctly. Okay. So when we're looking at charging things correctly, For example, when I was at Chester's Hamburgers, um, the person who was the cashier would ring in the order, and then they would put this check that looks kind of like this, what you see right here on the screen. They would put this check into the computer and it would, or the printer, and it would print what the cashier charged for on the back side of that ticket. And then my manager, I can still picture my managers. They literally would sit at the end of the bar and they would get each ticket and they had to physically check each ticket to make sure that what was on the front is printed on the back. And if there was a discrepancy, they would put it off to the side, they'd circle it and put it off to the side. And as a cashier, you only had X number of mistakes that you could make. Okay. One of the reasons why is one of the most common is if somebody ordered onion rings and French fries, maybe the cashier only charged them for 2 orders of French fries instead of onion rings. Or maybe they forgot to add an add-on like green chili, or they forgot to add on a side of chili or bacon or whatever. Okay. And so because of that, the manager would then make notes. And what do you think is an issue if we overcharge or undercharge our guests?
If you undercharge, then they're gonna come back more because they're cheaper, and if you overcharge, they're not gonna come back because it's about expensive.
Okay, so if you overcharge, they may decide that really wasn't that price value relationship we talked about in chapter 4. Maybe that's not worth it, so I'm not going to come back. Okay. If we undercharge the guest, we're going to be losing profit. Good, exactly. We'll be losing money. But then what happens if they come back the next time
I expect that.
and they expect that price and they're like, hey, I was just here last week and this order cost me $10.50 and you're telling me today it costs $11.50? Like, what's the difference? And they're going to probably be upset. Okay. So undercharging guests is as much of an issue as overcharging guests. So then the last thing, as we are looking at the cashiers and in the sales process, we want to make sure that we are giving the correct change and we're keeping track of the money that is being received and given back as far as change. Okay. And so to do that, we want to take a look at our cash banks. Okay. So when we have a cash bank, how are we doing on time? Okay, we're good on time. When we have a cash bank, we do have a formula. Okay. We want to take all of our cash that's in our drawer. We want to add all the checks. That's our currency. Okay. We also want to add our credit cards. That's going to give us our total sales. Okay. That's going to give us our total amount of revenue, I should say, actually. Let me change that to revenue. Okay. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to subtract our bank. What is the bank?
Is that in the vault?
It is in the book, yeah.
The vault.
Oh, in the vault? No. I mean, no, your bank is not in the vault. I mean, your bank is going to be maybe stored in a safe on property when it's not in use. But when it's in use, it's not in the safe.
Is it like the till?
It's the till. It's the amount of money that we start with. Okay? Because what happens if that first guest wants to pay cash? I have to have some kind of cash on hand to be able to give them change. Okay. So that bank is usually a certain dollar amount, and it's also a certain denominations of bills and coins. And so we want to subtract that bank because the bank is actually part of this cash right here. When I add up all that cash that's in the drawer, that bank that I started with is actually part of that cash. But did I receive money for it? No, right? I didn't sell anything for it. It was there when I started. So that's why I have to subtract the bank. And then that should equal my total sales. Okay. So let's do the example. Let me open up Excel so you all can see it. Oh, maybe it's here already. Yep, this one right here. All right. So we have our cash and our credit cards. We want to add that together. So what do we get when we add these two numbers together? 9,500. So that's the total, 9,500. And then I started with $250, so I want to subtract that. And $9,250. Okay.
Does that mean we're over by $10?
So then what we want to do is we want to then subtract our POS, our point of sales report, tells me that my sales for that particular time period was 9,240. So when I subtract those two numbers, that means I have a $10 overage. I have $10 more than I should in my cash register. Is that an issue?
It depends.
More.
It sounds like somebody somewhere got charged more.
I was thinking somebody gave them a tip.
Okay, maybe somebody gave them a tip and they just put it into the cash register, potentially. Okay. Maybe they gave somebody the wrong change. Okay, so they shortchanged somebody. That's an issue. Maybe they forgot to ring in an order. If it's an even number like that, $10, maybe that somebody, like, let's say it's a bar and somebody ordered a drink and they just gave them the $10 and they were really busy, so they forgot to go back and ring that drink in. That happens all the time. Okay. So, but we want to understand why we are over by $10. And then we also want to see what is a trend. If David is on cashier and he's consistently over, that's an issue. If you're under, that's an even bigger issue because that means you are either giving out the wrong change, you're giving people too much money, or you're not taking in enough money. And so maybe we need to slow down and count our money a little bit more carefully. But if we are under, then that means that's a complete loss of profit because we sold that product, but we don't have the sales, the revenue to match that. Okay, so let's do the next example. 1,500 and 8,000. So we add those two numbers together and get 9,500 again. We minus our bank, we subtract our bank, 9,400. That's the money that I actually have. And my point of sale says I should have 9,425. So when I subtract that, I get a negative 25, which means now I'm short $25. Okay. Depending on where you work, I've had students in the past that said if they were more than $10 short, it was an automatic fire on the spot.
Dave and Buster's has that.
Dave and Buster's has that? Okay.
Well, back when I worked there.
It's usually a certain dollar amount. If you are short by a certain dollar amount, it's an automatic fire on the spot.
Or it comes out of your pocket.
Or it comes out of your pocket, but usually they do that because they don't want people to establish a pattern. Oh, it's like, okay, well, I'm $5 short this time. Well, what if that person pocketed $5? Just like when we talk about our food. If we're not tracking the food in the inventory, if okay, that's okay, Sally, you were short $5, that's no big deal. Well, then next time it might be $10. And then this it's no big deal. We're not gonna really do anything about it. Okay, next time it might be 15 or $20. And so really we want to make sure that we are keeping track of this sales and we're comparing what we should have to our sales reports. Any questions, comments, concerns about chapter 8?
No.
Like the easiest concept I've seen so far.
I think sometimes because this is a little bit simple, like it makes sense, right? Okay, so if I issue 75 steaks and I serve 55 and I return 20, well, then that's 75. My variance is 0. So a lot of times with this type of math, it's really easy to follow because you can visualize it. It makes a lot of sense. And then same thing with, excuse me, same thing with like the cash and the drawers. We want to make sure that those, whatever we have, whatever our cash and credit cards add up to is equal to our POS, our point of sales reports. Chapter 9 will deal with labor. And then chapter 10 comes back to protecting revenue. So we'll do this cash bank stuff a little bit more in chapter 10, as well as some other ways to protect our revenue. All right. That is all I have for today. Thank you all so much. I'll see you on Wednesday where we'll go over chapter 9. Nope, that if you want to take a picture of that, you can put that in your extra credit notes page assignment. All right, thank you. Any questions online before I log out?
Sure.
Yes, Anna, you can come speak to me when you're here at school. All right, thank you so much. You're welcome to log out.